Down this road is a small city once thriving and full of life, but now desolate and abandoned. Well, abandoned save for the horrors rumored to reside within, which I presume is why you're here. Now, there's nothing wrong with a little morbid curiosity, but please, remember to stay close to your guides. We wouldn't want anyone to get left behind now.
Hello and welcome to Nopeville, the city filled with all the terrifying and horrible things that make you say nope.
Nope.
We're your tour guides. I'm Jen.
And I'm Christine, and we invite you to join our tours through the city, including all things paranormal, true crime, and supernatural.
From haunted places to possessions.
From serial killers to cults.
From zombies to cryptids.
You can find out more on our website at nopevillepodcast.com.
And catch a tour today wherever you get your podcasts.
Hi, anyone and everyone. Welcome to Have You Heard About This Case? My name is Sam.
And my name is Kelly.
And I am the elusive Ashley that no one has heard from yet.
Yay!
Yes, we're very excited because today we have our special guest. And Ashley, why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, I'm Ashley. I go by many names. I wear many hats. And I originally started thinking about this podcast with Sam, I don't even know, like 2 years ago. My life caught up with me.
It's been a couple years.
At least. Yeah, never got a chance to really fulfill the goals. Kelly jumped in and ran with it, and it has been amazing. I've loved the episodes so far, but now I get to put in a little bit here and there when I can, so I can still be a little bit of a part of it, which is awesome.
Yes, one of the originators.
Yeah, this is going to be a fun episode.
The thought came from me, but you guys ran with it and made it what it is.
And we are happy that you're able to join us. We hope that there'll be a lot of opportunities like this. But before we kind of dive into what our episode is about today, I know, Ashley, you've listened to a few of our episodes, and for anyone who may not have listened before, we like to ask a couple questions at the beginning of each episode so that you have the opportunity to get to know us a little bit more.
Okay.
And we don't like to take up a whole lot of time, so let's just dive right into that. So, Kelly, what's your question for us today?
Okay, so my first is more of a statement, which is I just wanted to thank Ash for all she does for the podcast off air. You guys don't get to hear that, but anytime there are questions about things that we need help with, contacting Ash has always been a really great resource. So I'm really glad she's here.
Yeah, I'm glad I can help. With my background in emergency services, I get to see some of the things that relate to the cases. So I do what I can.
It makes so much more sense and is so helpful. But for our fun question of the day, Ash, all three of us love live music.
Yes.
So what would you say are your top 3 concerts you've ever been to?
Ooh, well, I feel like that fluctuates a lot because I get in moods of things where I get when we saw Foo Fighters back in 2018, I think it was, I was all about Foo. Everything was Foo Fighters. It was the best concert I've seen in my life. But 2 years before that, the first time I saw Paul McCartney, I was like, oh, hell yeah, he's my man. But then back in this past September, I saw Ghost, and I was like, oh my God, that is the coolest thing I've ever seen. So currently...
What's hilarious is I was texting Kelly this morning about this question, and I called out all 3 of those for you.
Hell yeah.
You did. You did.
I literally said, this is the test. Can I do this?
Yeah, and you knew.
Right. Yeah, I don't have an exact answer because it goes on what I'm in the moment for. Right now, I would have to say Ghost because they just announced a new tour in the U.S., and I'm Ghost-centric again.
I know, I want to go.
Please do.
Those are all 3 such good ones. How could you pick? Right? How could you pick?
Right. Yeah, I think my 3, 2 of them would be the same. 2 of them would be, oh, there's a cat in the microphone.
Rigby.
2 of them, Foo Fighters and Paul McCartney for me. I have not had the pleasure of seeing Ghost yet. But I think my 3rd would probably be Pearl Jam. That was a really special concert at Wrigley Field. And if you're a Pearl Jam fan, you know that Eddie Vedder is a diehard Cubs fan. I'm a diehard Cubs fan. I went to that concert alone because I refused to miss it.
Yeah, I remember you called me that day. I live 5 hours away, and you're like, can you get here in like 6 hours? I'm like, no.
Yeah, I found like last minute tickets. I'm like, can you get here? Because I'll get your
like,
ticket.
I'd love to, but yeah, no.
What about yours, Kelly?
For my top 3, I haven't been too lucky to see too many of my favorite artists because my issue is so many of them are dead.
Aww.
But
Which is so sad, but I totally understand.
It's a bummer, but you I can't see Led Zeppelin. There's no more John Bonham. But recently I got to see Eric Clapton live.
Oh yeah.
And that was very special for me, and I was able to take my parents with me. It was my father's birthday gift, and we got to see Clapton, and I was so excited because the man plays like 3 dates a year, and one of them just happened to be in Chicago. And I was like, we're going. That's the end of the story. And the man can just play guitar like I've never seen. But that was
one of my favorite
really
stories
fun.
that Paul McCartney tells on stage is about Clapton.
Oh, yeah?
And I won't go like too long into it because this is already kind of a longer intro. But it's about how I think he was talking about Jimi Hendrix. And Jimi Hendrix was on stage and his guitar was just not tuned right. Like there was just something going on. And he saw Clapton in the audience. He's like, get up here. And he came up there and helped him fix his guitar.
I remember that.
You guys, when I was there, I couldn't believe it. We had decent seats. We were at the United Center. So when you hear Sam and Ash talk about Wrigley Field, obviously that is like a huge stadium location here in Chicago. The Cubs play there normally. Clapton was at the United Center, which is also a large performing arts venue / sporting, meaning the Blackhawks play there. So they're both really large shows.
Yeah, I think it's like a 25,000 seat stadium for a concert. Like it's big.
Yeah, they're really large. And yeah, we had decent seats, and you guys, he played his guitar, which he has called Blackie since the 70s. It's the same guitar that he once sold for cocaine and then rebought. And so he still plays that guitar, but the entire side of the stage going all the way back was just lined with guitars.
Wow. That is awesome.
Yeah, for like each number or every other couple numbers, he would go back over to the rack and just pick up an entirely different guitar.
Nice.
It was pretty cool.
It's just that there's something special about seeing an artist like that play live.
Yeah. And then I have tickets. It's not happened yet, but I know it's going to happen, and I'm excited. I have tickets to see Lizzo in 2023, and I'm about to get down.
Oh, you've been so excited about Lizzo. She was here last October, and you wanted to go.
I wanted to go so bad. And now the special tour is doing another one, and I am going. I have nosebleed seats, and I don't care. I am going to party.
Like, and we talked about getting Foo Fighters tickets for the summer.
Yeah.
That we might try to do that this summer.
Yeah, they're playing in Milwaukee at Hogfest this year with Green Day and Joan Jett and the Blackhearts.
Yeah, which I think it just sounds like so much fun to go to like a biker fest.
Yeah.
And, yeah, and see Foo Fighters and Joan Jett.
Oh, that would be
but
so
before
fun.
we get too sidetracked, because
Yes.
the three of us could literally be talking about this for hours, but that's not why we're here today.
No.
No, ma'am.
But as you can tell, we kind of already got off to a bit of a unique start in comparison to our previous episodes. And it's not going to end here because we're not going to be talking about true crime today. Instead, we're going to be talking about a place that is potentially supernatural. And one of the really big reasons I specifically asked Ash to come for this episode is because we both spent a lot of time there as teenagers.
Yes, we did.
So today we're talking about the Paulding Light in Paulding, Michigan. The town of Paulding is just a little bit over the Wisconsin border, in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. This was a little bit of a drive for us, but since we grew up in northern Wisconsin, it was just an easy drive for us to go up, spend a couple hours there, and still drive home that night, so we didn't have to get a hotel or anything like that.
Yeah, this was definitely not an urban area that anything you wanted to do, you had to drive at least like 45 minutes to a couple hours away.
Exactly.
Okay.
And Google Maps technically says that this is considered to be Bruce's Crossing, Michigan, but it's actually a lot closer to the town of Paulding, hence the nickname Paulding Light. But I also found this interesting. Wikipedia also says that another nickname is the Dog Meadow Light, which I've never heard before. Ash, have you ever heard it called that?
I've heard that, but only because I've kind of like looked into this in the past. I don't know why Dog Meadow. There's not a
I
dog
don't know either.
and it's not a meadow, so I have no idea.
Yeah. Like I
Right.
read that for the first time doing this research, and I thought that was just kind of interesting. But before we kind of get to the paranormal aspect of Paulding, Ash, would you mind giving us a little bit of history on the town?
Well, Paulding, I mean, if you call it a town, itty bitty, very, very tiny. It's in Ontonagon County, or as my friends here like to say, on top of our noggin. It's surrounded by the Ottawa National Forest, and the town is unincorporated. It only has like 200 people in it. So, like, this is the size of some people's high schools. It's right between, like
You're
Sam
right,
said,
yeah,
Bruce's
yeah.
Crossing and Watersmeet. And if you've ever watched, I think it was the Paramount Channel approximately 10 years ago, Watersmeet was featured in a show called Nimrod Nation because their high school mascot is called the Nimrods.
I forgot about that.
It's one of my favorite t-shirts. Nimrod Nation is a t-shirt that I bought at the gas station over in Bruce Crossing. And you can tell if you're a local, if you say Bruce's Crossing as the Bruce's plural, it's Bruce possessive. There's only one Bruce.
Only one
Right.
Bruce,
Yes.
and it's his crossing.
It's his
Okay.
crossing. No multiple Bruces.
There's one
Okay.
stoplight.
Yeah.
That's
Okay.
it.
Yes.
That's the crossing.
So-
It's one stoplight.
Yeah. Well, Paulding is not named after Bruce or anyone from Bruce's Crossing. It's named after a man named John Paulding who fought in the American Revolution. He was one of 3 men who caught the British spy John Andre and was given high honors from George Washington. Many towns across the country have been named after him as part of his legacy.
And that's kind of the history of Paulding. There's not much beyond that. It's so small. But just south of the town, there's a small road called Robbins Pond Road, or Old Highway 45. This road's only about, I don't know, half a mile to 3/4 of a mile long. And after just about a quarter of a mile, it turns into a dirt road. And then it eventually ends at a metal barrier as just a dead end. On the other side of that metal barrier is this big sandy hill that goes down to this creek. And the creek is, I don't know, 3-4 feet deep. It's not that deep, but you can wade across it, but you're probably up to your knees, maybe mid-thighs.
Oh, yeah. You'll be getting wet.
Yeah. And it's 10 to 15 feet wide. It's not that big. But then on the other side of that creek is another hill that goes up. And it kind of mirrors and matches the hill that's at the end of Robbins Pond Road. So it kind of creates this just little valley. And we'll post some daytime photos so that you can get a sense of what this looks like on our Twitter and our Instagram. But it's also a very heavily wooded area. If you've never been up to northern Wisconsin or northern Michigan, it's very dense with woods. This was a big logging area back in the day. And there is a path that's kind of cleared at the end of the road, kind of where that sandy walk is down to the creek. And it's, I don't know, 30, maybe 40 feet wide. It's not that big, but it's cleared all the way down to the creek, back up the hill.
And I think the only reason why it's cleared is because of the power lines that go down it. It's not like naturally cleared.
No, it's not naturally cleared. There is another potential theory that we'll get into quite a bit later as one of the theories of what the light itself could be. But apparently in the 60s, this area was a popular makeout spot.
Hell yeah.
And that's around the time that people started to see the light.
Oh, they saw the light.
Right?
No pun. No, very, very punny. Yes.
So now to the light itself. You can only see it at night, and it's typically about an hour after the sun goes down when it gets really dark. And there's no street lights or anything in this area. When you're out in those middle of those woods alone, there's nothing.
No.
But you can actually see an actual light on the other side of the creek at the top of that hill. So when you're at the metal barrier at the end of Robbins Pond Road, looking directly across, you can see it on that opposite hill. It's not always in the same spot. It's not always the same color. And it's not always just one light. And even sometimes it doesn't appear. But when it does appear, it seems to kind of be floating above the ground. It's not at exactly ground level. And when you're at that metal barrier looking towards the light, I don't know, you quarter mile away, you think? It's not that far.
It's so hard to judge because, well, one, it moves, which we'll discuss. But judging distance in general just is not easy.
Exactly. My general estimate is a quarter mile, being that I've walked down to the creek many times. I've never crossed it. But I'd say that was it wasn't that long of a walk. It's, I don't know, 3-4 minutes and then you're down at the creek.
Yeah, you can almost see it from the barrier, but it's just down in the ravine.
Exactly. And as I mentioned, the colors can change and it can be more than one light. I've personally seen it be white, yellow, orange, purple, red, and I think I've seen green a few times, but when it's green, it kind of feels like it's tricking your brain because it's a really soft green.
Yeah, it's almost like how you describe like Northern Lights, where it's like tealy, kind of.
Yeah, but it's not Northern Lights.
No.
I've seen Northern Lights before. We can see them in northern Wisconsin and northern Michigan on kind of a rare occasion. And those are like kind of wispy clouds up in the sky more. This is like a concentrated light source.
I would say orb, but I regret using that word, honestly, because orb just means, like, in my head, refers to ghosty things. We don't know for sure if that's what it is, but...
Yeah, we have no idea.
No.
But I can say pretty confidently, it is not the Northern Lights. It is far too consistent than the Northern Lights in the area. And the Northern Lights are up in the sky. This seems to be fairly close to ground level.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it likes to change colors. Sometimes it can be gradual change where it just kind of like is a light, like, you know, those like LED lights that you can kind of transition colors to. It's kind of like something like that. But sometimes it's also as if one light turns off and another one turns on in a different color.
Yeah, I've seen it both ways.
You never quite know what it's going to do. It also likes to move a lot. So sometimes it just kind of sways back and forth or up and down. Sometimes it's in like a circular pattern. I think the circular pattern is kind of the most common that I've seen, at least.
Yeah, me too.
But it can also be more than one light at a time. I've seen up to like 3 or 4 at a time, but usually one of them is brighter than the others.
Yeah, I've seen it where there's like one main light and other lights circling around it. I've seen what I thought was like a line of 3, like going vertically.
Yep.
And they were all the same size. It's really weird.
And it doesn't like other light.
No.
If you are driving up, you actually want to like turn off your headlights because it'll go away.
2 purposes for turning off your headlights when coming up. One, yeah, you don't want to scare the light. It's sensitive. But the other is that all the people standing there, which there's usually at least a couple, they will be absolutely blinded because they've been staring into the darkness for a while, and a headlight coming up the road will burn your retinas.
But also, you need to be careful not to hit those people because it's dark.
Yes, I usually recommend like your marker lights on.
Mm-hmm. Or just parking down the road a little bit and walking up.
Yes.
That's what I do a lot of the time.
Yeah, that would keep you safer.
Exactly. And even like if you have a flashlight and you're trying to walk down to the creek, I highly recommend just pointing it at the ground. Do not hold it up towards where the light is, because even that little bit amount of light from a flashlight can affect it.
Yeah. The one light I've seen that has not affected it is actually some of our EMS lights. If you're outside and you don't want to like have something super bright like that, for whatever reason, you can turn a lot of those lights to red, and it gives you enough light to like write a report, but not.
Oh, interesting.
Right. So I've used the red light on my flashlight, and that seems to not piss it off.
That's very interesting. So we'll talk about red lights a little further down here. Another thing that this light would do is it would chase you. So if you go and walk down to that creek, it kind of feels like it's maintaining the same distance, like it's going away from you as you're walking towards it. But then as you turn around and start to go back up towards the barrier at the road, it seems like it's following behind you and kind of trailing you. And Ashley, I think it's kind of crazy. You and I have never been to the light together.
Yeah, well,
It really kind of blows my mind.
Yeah, in high school, we were just enough far apart where we had like different groups of friends. Like you were a freshman right after I was done in high school. So we never really got...
you were a freshman in college. I was a freshman in high school at that time.
but we both went so many times and had similar experiences.
Yeah, so why don't you talk about a few of your specific experiences that you remember?
Yeah, we've had, I can't even think of all of them. I know there's going to be more, but some of the ones that I remember the most are like being in my car. I think at that point I was driving up Park Avenue, like a Buick Park Avenue.
The car that I also drove in high school.
And it seemed to like zoom into the car.
Oh, really?
Like, I feel like it was me and I believe my friend Emily. We were like sitting, I was in the driver's seat, she was in the passenger seat. And we were just like kind of talking. Cause I mean, half the reason you go up to the light is just to get out of town and just hang out. We were both good kids. We were not under the influence of anything. And we just kind of drove up there, chit chat about, boys and stuff. And we're in the car. I don't even think we were looking at the light. And all of a sudden the car gets like brighter. And I remember Emily saying like, did you turn on the radio? Like the lights on your radio? I didn't. The car was off.
Oh, that's crazy. I haven't heard that story before.
Yeah, I had to like dig through my memory for that one. Because that was, I had to have been maybe 16. Like, I drove.
So next time I see Emily, I'll have to ask her about that too.
Yeah, because it was bizarre. And then another one I remember was long after high school. I was in college at my sorority, and the entire group came up. I think I was actually out of college at that point. The whole sorority group that I was in used the area that we were in as like a retreat to kind of, get out of town, and they rented a house. I was working at a store in town, and I met them to drive them up to the light. And I had probably like 25 girls up there. And some of them might have had a little bit to drink. But I remember one of them getting up there and just starting to cry. Like, what is wrong with you? And she wasn't that drunk. She wasn't the type. But she's like, it's talking to me. And she felt a this overwhelming like sorrow, and she couldn't explain it.
Oh, see, that's I've never heard anything like that before. But when you do like look into ghost experiences and stuff, that's a pretty common reaction.
It is.
But every other time I've been up there, it's just like you described, where there's a light, there's just something. I don't always have like it moving around every time, but there's always at least some sort of glow.
Yeah, and sometimes it's super dull. Sometimes it's incredibly bright. We'll post some pictures on our socials because it's really hard to get a picture of it as well, because you're literally taking a picture in the dark and the light is pretty far in the distance. But I did find a couple of photos where it's very bright. I don't know if the photo. I can't say if the photos are doctored or not to look better.
I was actually thinking, since I am still in the vicinity of this, the new iPhones. I don't know if it's the like the Galaxy phones and stuff as well, but their night vision cameras are pretty freaking spectacular.
Oh.
I think I might just go up and do that here soon. So if I do that, I'll let you guys know.
Say if you're up there, yeah, that would be great. But if not, we do have backup photos that we'll post.
At least I know mine will be legit.
Right? We'll know for a fact. But Kelly, I also took you up there. We went to go visit my town last September. We barely saw the light, but why don't you tell us a little bit of your experience with it?
Yeah, absolutely. So Sam and I drove up, and this is my first time this far north, sort of like Wisconsin, Michigan, and Sam's right. It's very densely wooded, all the way along this path down to the light. And the strange part was, when Sam and I were there, we had our headlights on as we started going down the path. And then we knew right away that there was almost no one else there.
Well,
we didn't see any.
We were the only people, which is really weird to me.
We didn't see a single person when we first got there. And we killed the headlights and went out and saw it. Like, I definitely saw it. It looked, to the untrained eye and to people who didn't know better, I would say it looked like about the height of like a radio tower. It looked lower than the clouds when I saw it. You might be able to mistake it.
It was crazy foggy that night too.
It was, and we saw it. It was shining just as one, while we were standing out there. And then we watched it split into two, and that was really cool. Like they started just sort of forming a figure eight pattern. And then we got back into the car because Sam and I turned to each other and said, it's so dark and so wooded out here. There's no one here. No one would hear us. So we got back into the car because
we spooked ourselves out.
We did.
That is nightmare fuel right there.
Right.
Exactly.
You guys, it's so dark up there. Like when Ash and Sam are saying it's dark. And Sam and I didn't even go down the sandy path because it was so dark that we easily could have just tumped right over.
Oh, yeah.
And the other thing that I remember from visiting the Paulding Light also goes to what you were saying before about other lights, because as Sam and I got back in the car, we saw a couple start to arrive. And this couple had regular handheld flashlights, and they were clearly making their way toward the barrier. And right, like they said, right next to the barrier is that path down to the creek. And so as they started going down to the creek and they were shining their flashlights, the light went away.
Ooh.
I remember they were down there for what, maybe 20 minutes or so, Sam, because we sat there for a little bit.
We were there maybe about a full hour when we were there, and it was about 15 minutes after we got there that they arrived.
Yeah, and they didn't spend too much time down there, but when they went down with the flashlights, the light disappeared. And then I don't remember if it was after they had left the creek area or if it was before, but I remember the light came back sort of dimly. I also remember
kind of like a little flicker.
Yeah, like a little flicker. It was a little happier. And Sam, I don't know if you remember this, but maybe it was a trick of my eyes or so. I remember seeing like a faint reddish, almost like a halo around the light. And that could be That could
Red
be me.
is pretty common, but it's very faint when you see it.
Yeah, it almost looked like a halo around it.
Yeah, I've definitely seen red like that before.
Yeah, and I guess it could have just been my brain saying, like, maybe it's a radio tower, maybe it's red. But I remember thinking to myself, no, a radio tower is extremely recognizable. The red would be consistent, it would be bright, there would probably be more than one. My only summation was this light had nothing to do with like radio towers or anything like that.
Yeah, nothing regular.
It's really hard to kind of pinpoint, and we'll do our best with our descriptions and posting photos and stuff, but it's really hard to fully describe if you haven't been there before. But there was this interesting experience, and Ash, I don't know if you've also met this guy before, and I don't remember his name. And honestly, I don't think we'd even say it because we would want to contact him to ask him if it was okay. We don't have a way to do that.
Yeah.
But he was there basically every single night. He'd come with his husky and they would just hang out for a few hours, talk to people who were also checking out the light. But this man believes that the light is actually aliens, and he swears he was abducted by them.
Yeah, I do remember this guy. He had a cloak, like a really awesome cloak, like to the ground.
Oh, I don't remember that.
And he just kind of hung out there and like waited for people to come up so he can tell his story.
Yeah, and I don't remember a ton of details. Before Kelly and I went up there this last fall, it had been at least 10 years since I had been up there. And I remember just like little tiny snippets of his story. But I do remember him saying that he had gone to the other side of the creek, up that other hill, and that a purple beam of light came down from the sky, and that transported him to the aliens.
Yeah, I vaguely remember that as well. Like you said, I don't remember the details because it's probably been 10 to 15 years for me. But he was regular. Like other people have heard this story too about like this guy being there.
my friends and I would like all sit in a circle with the husky in the middle, and the husky just loved attention. So we would all just sit there and pet him while listening to this guy's story. And it got to the point where we actually had heard it so many times, we just drowned out the guy because we knew what he was going to say. It never changed. And we would just hang out with this husky.
I do like that there was just a man up there waiting to just share. He's like, I'm going to tell him about I'm going to tell him about the aliens. It's going to be me. I'm going to educate everyone, and I love it. Live your truth.
I wish he was there when you and I went up this last September.
I feel like it could be one of two things. Either this guy actually, well, maybe three. This guy was abducted by aliens, and yeah, that's theory one. Theory two, he has some kind of like mental defect where he believes he did, and he was in a state of illusion, paranoia, something.
Mm-hmm.
Third is, which I think is actually probably the most accurate, is that none of this happened. He knows none of this happened, and he really just likes screwing with teenagers.
Or he was on some sort of hallucinogenic.
Yeah, okay,
something.
4 theories on UFO man.
I think the fourth is probably the most accurate.
It might be a combination of 3 and 4. Yeah.
Exactly.
I was gonna say I kind of think it could be 3 and 4 because I do know that my dad, one of his favorite pastimes is messing with teenagers.
Oh yeah, our dads too.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
But let's dive into a little bit of the research that was done on what the light actually is. And in 2010, researchers from Michigan Tech University, which is not far, that's over in Houghton, Michigan, which is, I don't know, Ashley, 60, 90 miles, like somewhere kind of in there
I think
from
it takes
Paulding.
about an hour to get there from Paulding, about.
Yeah. So just not terribly far north from where Paulding is. Their study says that it's actually lights from the highway, which is like 4.8 miles away.
And that one is like weird. If you look at a Google Maps, which I did pull up like all the Google map and like all kinds of aerial maps I can find, there is a road directly across from the creek, the valley thing that goes like, it almost is like the other half of Old 45. But it's
it's private property.
It's private property, and it's also like another abandoned style road. So like there's not cars frequenting this thing. You're not going to be seeing these cars every night like you see the light. And if you look straight north on where the direction you're looking at for the light, you're to the side of the actual Highway 45 where there are cars. And it's...
Yeah, you'd kind of have to look on an angle.
Yeah, and you're not looking at an angle. It goes directly north, not northeast.
Yeah, and like the idea of, yes, it's probably headlights makes a lot of sense in the reality of everything. But with just some of the examples that Ashley just came up with, which I haven't kind of shared this script with her, really. She hasn't really read through this. This is just kind of like...
Oh, hey, I skimmed it 5 minutes ago.
Well, that's my point, is like, you and I didn't have this full conversation before recording.
Right.
But you already brought up a few things of examples why we don't think that we personally don't think that this is the answer. But another reason is the different colors and the movements. I know headlights can be different colors, but the biggest argument is how long I've seen the light not move without any sort of flickering, anything like that, just staying stationary in one spot, and then change colors gradually. A headlight doesn't act like that.
No.
And then I've seen it transition between white, orange, purple, red. Like that again just doesn't explain headlights to me. And as we kind of mentioned a little bit, when Kelly, you and I were up there, it was incredibly foggy. It was so foggy that we could barely see the treetops. And there was one point where we were kind of confused on our drive up there. There was this like kind of intense red glow just above the treetops next to the highway. And we're like, what is this? This is so weird. It was a radio tower. And
Right.
it was just the glow from the red light on the top of the radio tower illuminated all of the fog and the clouds right there just to glow red.
Mm-hmm.
That's
And
eerie.
Yeah.
that was more proof to us that the light itself isn't a radio tower.
Yep.
Right, because we had just seen one and we had just seen how it behaved in this fog, and that light was nothing like the radio tower's light. It was, like you said, incredibly foggy. It would have lit up everything around it. And then just in my one personal experience, I saw the light split into two, like I said, and start doing like essentially like figure eights. It was awesome.
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't happen to radio towers.
Well, and with that
headlights.
example of when we were up there, it was so foggy, we weren't going to be able to see almost 5 miles away to the road. There's no way.
Mm-hmm.
No, I think fog like that, you're not going to be seeing 1 mile.
Exactly. And I think that's part of why the light barely showed up that night, why it was kind of dim. And then when it did eventually return, it was like, it almost felt like it was tricking our eyes to think it was there because it was that dim. But we knew we were in the pitch black. So,
Oh, yeah.
like we saw it. And as you said, that little tiny red glow, it was like we had to like squint our eyes to like really kind of see that.
Mm-hmm.
But then another argument I had, which Ashley, you kind of mentioned a little bit, is when the light turns red. You were mentioning for like emergency services using a red light because it barely illuminates your paper, but it's enough for you to write and not be insanely bright.
Yeah, red light is really useful, and it's kind of like almost a dark room, like for film processing.
Mm-hmm. But it doesn't make sense for me with the car conversation that the red light is a tail light, because obviously headlights are designed to see ahead of you and for people coming the opposite direction to see you. Tail lights are designed to be seen much closer because red just does not illuminate like that.
Correct.
So 5 miles
That's a good
away,
point.
seeing a tail light, I don't think that's going to happen.
And if it were taillights, wouldn't you more often see 2 Paulding lights than you would 1?
True.
Because maybe somebody
Well,
has a busted taillight. I don't know.
One argument, which I have further down in my notes here, but I'll just bring it up now because it fits well. One argument that these researchers have is that due to heat coming off of the earth, it creates a mirage type of effect on the lights themselves. That's why they're not always stationary. That's why sometimes you see multiple, sometimes you see one. I don't really buy that because I have been up to the light during all different times of the year. For those of you who have been up north, you know it gets very cold. The ground freezes. There's not going to be heat coming off of the ground like there could be during the summer or the spring or the fall when the weather's changing. I don't buy it.
No. Of curiosity, I just did a quick Google search on how far the naked eye can see. And if it's on the ground level, like something sitting on the ground, you can see it 3 miles because of the curvature of the earth. But yet skyscrapers can see up to like 6 miles because they don't have a horizon obstruction. But if you're looking, say, straight up at a plane in the sky, you can see about 6 miles, like up. But on clear days, if you're in a building, like say the Sears Tower, RIP, the Willis Tower, then you can see 50 miles.
Wow.
50. Okay. Because I'm literally sitting here. I'm at my desk, which is next to my window. I'm looking at the Sears Tower. And it's about 10 miles away.
Yeah, because you're coming from an elevated
there's a
surface.
haze. Exactly. But like I literally all I can see is the shape. There is a haze that is very clear between me and the Sears Tower that I can't see any sort of detail.
And these numbers are saying that there's absolutely no obstruction, no fog, no smog, pollution, clouds, none of it.
Yeah, we're sitting here on a very clear day, and we are in the city, so there's going to be some sort of smog.
And this seems somewhat legit. It comes from the opticalacademy.com. I mean, it sounds like they know their stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I tried to find a lot of this research because it's so unexplained. I tried to get as much research as I could from these like scientific studies done by schools and things. But we're kind of, I feel like we're debunking them, even though we could be very much wrong and they could be right. But from what I did read about Michigan Tech's study, it was a fairly thorough explanation with the research that they did. Like, I understand how they came up with it, despite not fully agreeing with it. But I'm really curious during the research how they accounted for things such as weather and fog. I don't know what time they did their research. I do know the results were released just before Halloween in 2010. But when were they actually out there in person?
I sure hope that this is like a really well-known school. They do a lot of geology work. Most everything is science-based. I'd sure hope they take into account every variable and use like the scientific method we all learned in 6th grade.
Well, that's why I'm so interested about it, because they say that they were out there about 15 times for an hour at a time, but they don't mention weather conditions, and the weather can be incredibly temperamental up there. And I saw nothing at all about other theories or potential explanations, which is just kind of weird for a scientific study for me.
Yeah.
Where it's like, okay, here are all of our different thoughts. This is the one that we think is the most accurate. This one was just like, it's just lights on the road.
Nope.
That just really surprises me because just my husband, as you guys have heard me talk about him before, he's done a lot of studies just in his line of work, and they're all incredibly detailed. And I'm so surprised that there was no like even notation of the weather, like rainy, or just, even one word to describe the weather.
Yeah, and like being up there 15 times. I've been up there dozens and dozens of times. I think 15 times is a very small case study, especially when you're only there for an hour at a time.
True. I've been sitting there for multiple hours at a time, and the light changes over that time.
Exactly. But the way that they did conclude this was they used a telescope while at the light at Robbins Pound Road. And they noticed that they could see cars through the woods. I think they're doing this during the day. Again, they don't really notate that, but that makes the most sense to me that they're looking at this area during the day. But they also saw an Adopt a Highway sign through the trees. And I'm not sure if Adopt a Highway is kind of a regional thing or if it's national or worldwide. But
I think
the
that's
signs
national.
on the side of the road are small. They're a much, much smaller road sign. And what they said they did is once they noticed this sign, they sent somebody down towards that sign a little, like, I don't know, a little bit ahead of it. And they counted the cars and their timelines. And then somebody at the light counted when they saw the light appear. And that's how they believe they were able to determine that it's headlights.
Well, this entire story hinges on the fact that they saw this sign. I have a hard time believing that.
Yeah, me too.
I was going to say, I don't buy it either.
Like, I don't want to discount the study because this is a reputable university that came up with it. But as somebody who has been there dozens and dozens of times, I don't know.
So, just to clarify, because my brain has the dumb with science and math, they're positing here that this Adopt a Highway sign, the reflection of it from headlights is creating the light.
No, it's actual just cars driving down the road. They just were able to determine what stretch of road these cars are driving down because of that sign.
Okay.
And it's like, Ashley, you've lived up there for 25 years. I was up there for 15. We've been there during all different sorts of weather, trees filled with leaves. Then, there's a lot of pine trees up there, too. So those are always kind of
Yeah,
there were. It was spooky.
But I don't believe this.
No,
I don't know. I find it very hard to believe.
I do too, because those Adopt a Highway signs are on state highways and county highways. The highway that they're referring to would more than likely be US Highway 45. It's the only one kind of within like earshot, 10 miles of this spot. And it doesn't, where you're standing at the guardrail, whatever it is there, guardrail, doesn't even point towards that highway. How would they possibly
it does a little
see
bit, like,
if you look to the side?
I don't buy it.
I don't buy it either.
I think it's too far of a distance.
Yeah.
And then they also argue that the multiple colored lights can be someone being pulled over. And correct me if I'm wrong, Ash, but I remember police cars in northern Michigan being very unique. They were all very dark blue, and they have one big red light at the top. They don't have a panel of multiple colored lights.
Yes, they call them the bubbles. In that area,
they look kind of weird if you're not used to it.
Yeah, it's like one round rotator light, and it's red. They don't have a lot of, there's no like town police officers that I know of. So you don't have like the town of Paulding, town of Watersmeet. And they might have some in Watersmeet. I don't know for sure on that one. But the majority of ones that you see are Michigan State Police. And that's where you're getting these sedans. And I've seen a couple pickup trucks now that are usually Crown
SUVs,
Victorias.
Like Tahoes and stuff.
Yeah, there's a couple Tahoes, yeah. But majority of them you see are old sedans, still either Crown Victorias and a couple Tauruses. And they are dark blue with a yellow-looking lightning bolt shaped Michigan logo and a red
and it's
bubble light.
Not like a very like bright logo either. It's just like very small and kind of like a delicate looking logo.
Yeah, and
then this big
weird.
red light. Yeah.
You feel like you're going back in time. Like it looks like the cars from Blues Brothers without being in black and white.
That's such a great reference because I was trying to imagine this cop car and you just conjured it for me. Yep. I've only seen in Ohio, they have, where I grew up, they have police lights are the red and the blue. And then here in Chicago, they're, Sam, correct me if I'm wrong, they're usually red and blue, but they favor even blue sometimes.
So they're usually white and blue, and then they also have a red factor for like a different type of emergency, I think. But if you just see someone pulled over on the road, they're white and blue, and that's it.
Yeah, I think the ambulances here mainly use red.
Yeah. But like with that all being said, this doesn't explain the other colors.
But I just looked up a picture of the current Michigan troopers, and it's the same description. It's the blue with the logo, same bubble light, but now they're putting them on Chargers. So they're calling them the modern cars.
Oh.
For me, I don't care what car you put it on. That light is making it look old.
Right. Yeah. We have Chargers in our hometown as cop cars, and those look sleek.
Yeah.
These I can't imagine.
I don't know if you guys can
That's
see if
funny.
I just texted you a picture of it. We'll see if we can get that picture on our socials. Because that
does look funny.
Yeah,
they're
it's
lighter
so
blue too.
Yeah.
You're right. It does look like a car from Blues Brothers, only modernized.
Yeah.
Like, because it's the newer car, but that light is just Blues Brothers all the way.
Oh yeah, and it does it.
Fun fact with Blues Brothers too. I've mentioned before that we grew up in the suburbs of Chicago, Mount Prospect. It's a Mount Prospect police car that they drive around everywhere.
Yes, and it's in the 4th of July parade every year.
Yep, just fun fact there. But kind of back to this light on the top of the cop car. This doesn't explain all the other colors. I can understand if there is a blue light on the cop car, maybe that could look a little purple if both the red and the blue are going off at the same time. That doesn't happen. But it also, like, you have to think about it. This has such a low population. They would have to constantly be pulling people over in the same exact spot all the time to make this happen. This town has 200 people in it.
Yeah. They're not, I mean, I've gotten pulled over there before, but it was once, and I've been up there probably 100 times.
Yeah, I've never gotten pulled over up there. And again, as Ash said, I've been up there dozens and dozens of times. It just doesn't make sense to me.
That every time you guys were there, someone was getting pulled over. Every single time.
Yeah, it just doesn't make sense.
Nah. Yeah.
They don't even have enough cops up there to make that happen.
No, I was going to say, Ash just said that, like, it's mostly Michigan State Police, and Sam, didn't you say it's unincorporated territory?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And they estimate only about 200 people in the town. There's no way. Right. Like down the other direction, closer to Watersmeet, south of the Light, there's a casino, but usually that's where people stop. They don't go a whole lot further north. So it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. But another kind of thing to potentially debunk this theory is apparently the light switches hills. I've never tried it before, but I've heard from multiple people who are unrelated to each other that they've crossed the creek and gone up to the other hill, and the light jumps to the hill that's at the end of Robbins Pond Road by the barrier.
Oh, that's new news.
Like I said, I've never done it, but this makes absolutely no sense if it is lights from the highway.
Yeah, that wouldn't make any sense.
It also kind of reiterates the fact that I don't believe that guy was abducted by aliens, but...
Are you doubting Cloak Man?
Yeah, his husky was the reason to hang out with him at that point.
Okay, here, if the husky were to tell the story, would you believe it?
What?
If the husky were to tell the story, would you believe it?
Oh, 100%. If a husky is talking to me, I would believe anything.
He knows things, yeah.
Let's say if Sergeant started talking to me, I would listen to every single word.
I would too.
I really want to hear Sergeant talk to me.
Sergeant is Ashley's husky.
He is about 16 years old. He is the wisest old man dog you've ever seen.
Yes. He is the dog from Up. He looks like him. He acts like him. He is the nicest dog.
But I picture his voice to be like the dog Shadow from An Incredible Journey.
Yeah.
Can confirm. Yeah. Can confirm.
Slow down, Shadow. Take your time.
And then let's move on to a whole nother theory, because we've all kind of said we just don't agree with the Michigan Tech research that they did. But another theory is minerals in the earth. And Ash, I know that you're kind of particularly interested in this idea. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, and I'm really surprised Michigan Tech didn't run with this further, because they are a mining school, and the UP is the coolest geological area I think I've ever seen. So mining,
it is cool.
Yeah, that's what it's all about. So that's the only reason why people are up there, to be honest. It was huge in the UP. Copper, silver, iron, all these minerals were mixed in the area. Copper was first mined by the Native Americans in the Keweenaw Peninsula. That's that little finger on the top. But the mining industry really boomed in the 1800s. So in 1842, the federal government signed a treaty with the Ojibwa natives, and the treaty gave natives money and supplies in exchange for the ability to mine commercially. So this area was the largest single producer of copper in the country. And what's so special about this area is that it was pure metal, like not metal ore and like in the rock, and they had to find little itty bitty pieces of it, and you got just itty bits. This was like chunks of copper, like pounds big.
Yeah.
So it was ready to use. It's like good to go. Whatever use they needed, all they had to do was melt down these giant rocks. But the issue with that, it's very labor intensive to get these big chunks of metal out of the ground. So when the natives were mining this pure metal, it wasn't uncommon to have people die daily, because it's so dangerous. There's actually a drill that they used to get a lot of these rocks out of the ground called the Widowmaker, because it frankly killed people.
Oh.
And
okay.
The Widowmaker, fun fact. Okay, I'm full of fun facts about the UP. I love the UP. But that's my favorite beer.
I know exactly what you're going to say, and I was going to say it as well.
Yeah. Keweenaw Brewing Company is a brewery up in, it's like north of Houghton, actually. But they make a beer called the Widowmaker, which is a delicious dark ale.
It's really good.
Highly recommend.
Ooh, I love a dark ale.
It's not thick like Guinness, but it's got the flavor. Yes. 10 stars.
That's our mom's favorite, too. Every time she sees a Widowmaker, she gets excited.
I served it at my wedding. It was that good. Well, that Widowmaker got so dangerous that the miners in 1913 and 1914 went on strike due to these conditions. Because, no one likes to die. This, in addition to developing technology, made it so less men were working, and it made the job much more dangerous. So, needless to say, there's a lot of potential for some ghosties in the UP. And a bit south of those mining areas, there were train lines used to transport metals, another really dangerous industry. But before we move on to the railroads, we should mention that one more mineral also found in the UP is quartz. And it's really common to find quartz with copper. They believe that quartz gets pushed closer to the surface of the earth when it's near a copper deposit. And the quartz is known to conduct energy. Like, when you go to, actually, when we went to a psychic in, where were we?
We were Salem.
The psychic that I spoke to gave me a piece of quartz afterwards. She said that I'll need this.
Oh, I forgot about that.
So it's sitting on my vanity in my bathroom. Still don't know what I need it for, but there it is. But it's believed that it is piezoelectric. I don't know if I'm saying this right, but piezoelectric means it has the ability to transform energy from one form to another. So according to Boston.com, common uses for quartz are in microphones and phonograph needles, because the quartz would take the energy and transmit it. But also, when the mechanical pressure is applied to quartz, like it's squeezed or shaken or something rubbed against it, the pressure turns into voltage, like voltaic energy. It would cause the quartz to slightly change shape. So Boston.com provided a great analogy to explain this. Quartz acted similarly to a tuning fork. With small amounts of quartz, the tuning fork can amplify the sound vibrations. The energy that quartz can absorb and amplify the energy. In the case of the tuning fork, it takes the mechanical pressure and turns it into sound. Now, why is this related to light? It gets weird. Rockhoundsource.com says quartz can be found in creek beds, and you see quartz in a creek and it's brightly broken off from a larger vein, and you look uphill to find the vein, and that's what we're seeing in the Paulding Light era, this valley with the creek down it. Mm-hmm. So it's potentially there. It makes energy, but we still don't know how it makes light energy.
Yeah, and we're also not confident that there is a quartz vein right there.
Yeah.
No, it just makes a lot of sense knowing the area.
Yes. So I kind of ran with this. Yes, we have 3 of the 4 factors, or 2 of the 3 factors in. So it's potentially there, and it has energy. But to make light, I kind of looked into this a little bit further. It's called triboluminescence. And it's actually used in things like X-rays, and somehow, kind of like, it's not static electricity, but it's very similar because it doesn't make heat, but it makes light sufficient to have electromagnetic radiation when it is fractured, called fractioluminescence, or vibrated, and little fibers, particles within the rock itself break apart. So it's not like physically breaking apart where you can see it.
Oh, interesting.
So you can take what they say, you could take 2 pieces of this crystal, rub it together or like click it together, and you'll see little sparks, but it's not like sparks from fracture, like physical, it's sparks from the quartz chemical coming off of it. I don't know if I'm saying it right. So I took that piece of quartz I have, but she actually gave me 2 pieces. Tried to bang them together in the dark in my bathroom. It didn't do anything. I couldn't see a single thing.
I think because those were probably polished. I think it needs to be raw.
Yeah. So my little scientific experiment is so minor. But there's another way you can see this, which I don't understand this whatsoever. I tried to find it where it makes sense, but they say when you pull tape off of a surface and it makes like a sparking light, like Scotch tape or duct tape.
Oh, interesting.
Because somehow there is mineral deposits of some sort used to make the glue.
Oh.
And it's using the tensile strength of the glue that's held onto a surface. And when you pull it apart, it's pulling apart these fractions of the molecules of the quartz.
Huh.
I couldn't test this either because, well, I forgot.
I'd say I would like to test that, but living in Chicago, my apartment is never that dark.
I'm in the woods. It gets that dark. I have duct tape here. I'm just the giant failure that totally forgot about. I read that a week ago until like 5 minutes ago.
You're also have
a busy woman.
Like you work a lot in
I've got a few things going on.
You've got stuff to do.
You have, It's insane how busy you are.
Yeah, it's
But
fun,
you
though.
also are like in the electricity field.
Yes. My husband
Like
is
that's
an electrician.
one of your occupations.
Yeah. One of the things I do involves the electrical field. So I did ask him about this stuff, and he's like, "Yeah, you're full of crap. that doesn't happen."
Well, this is also not the sort of thing that he studied. Like,
No.
he's doing something so different than this experimental stuff.
Right. But there is a study, not by my husband, but from St. Mary's University in Minnesota, that quartz has the ability to store historical events. Like, how? But this can result
This was
in
fascinating
residual
to read
hauntings.
about.
Yeah, it's
We'll
spooky.
link this.
So I don't know how they tested this, but this basically means that quartz is storing events that can be replayed, and it contains a magnetic material with significant effects on spatial distribution of magnetic abnormalities, which I feel really smart when I say that, but I don't know what it means.
It's basically saying that, and this is all kind of in the paranormal spiritual realm that this study was done in, but it's basically saying that quartz has the ability to store memories. And especially if something like tragic happened, it has an energy to it that can recreate that.
I want to know how they did this study. Like, how,
I
like,
don't
okay,
know,
Rock,
but
what do you remember?
I will link it. It was cool to read.
Yeah, I'll have to check that one out because that sounds spectacular.
Water is known to do this as well. This is something pretty common. If you kind of look up any sort of hauntings that has to do with something around water, they say the same thing.
For some reason, in my little peanut brain, that makes more sense because water, and obviously it's fluid, it moves. I don't know why, but I feel like that can react to things unlike a rock can.
But quartz is malleable. As we were saying, it can absorb energy and it can actually change its own shape. So even though it's a very hard piece of earth, it still has that ability to change itself. And that this is, again, all in the kind of the spiritual realm of things. But it uses that, like, was it piezoelectricity?
Mm-hmm.
That I think water kind of has a similar element to that. So it was just really interesting to read that. And again, I don't know how they did this. I don't know, like, all of the details of this study, but it was really cool to read.
That's pretty awesome.
And that kind of leads well into our next theory, which is about the railroad that ran through this area. There's a wooden sign on Robbins Pond Road right before you get to the light that says, "This location from which the Paulding Light can be observed." Legend explains its presence as a railroad brakeman's ghost destined to remain forever at the site of his untimely death. He continually waves his signal as a warning to all who come to visit.
Sam,
This is the story I heard the most growing up.
Oh, yeah, me too.
Sam, if you had told me this story before we went to the Paulding Light, I would have been like, you're not taking me anywhere near there. No,
Yeah,
no.
I told you nothing. I just said
I-
you're gonna see a light, and I just put you in the car and we went.
That could be a reason why she
I
didn't tell you the
have-
story.
Yeah, because I have a well-documented, some may say irrational, I am firm in it. I am very afraid of engine trains. Not like L-track trains, but like engineer-driven trains. They're very scary to me. And if I found out a railroad man was going to be there with his lantern, I'd be like, I got to get out of Dodge. This is not good.
Well, you might like this information I have coming up.
Yeah.
So this is the story that I heard the most growing up, and that falls into the idea of the quartz and the residual haunting. This person is doing the same action over and over again, and that's what a residual haunting is. And supposedly after this train crash, with the railroad workers being stuck in this cycle, that's the theory. But I did a lot of research on this. I didn't find much. In reality, I didn't really find anything. According to MichiganRailroads.com, there wasn't even a train track that ran through the area that's around the light.
Okay, that is hilarious because that's the story everyone knows.
I tried so hard to find this information.
Oh my
There was
God.
one that was about 20 to 30 miles north of Paulding near Mass City, Michigan, that ran east to west. There was not one that went that far south. And there was one, it was further east, but it was further away. But this train track would have had to run north to south. The closest one was 20 to 30 miles north, going east to west. So I couldn't find it. I felt like this was a really reputable source that I found this website, because they also had a list of all of the train accidents in Michigan dating back to 1851. No accidents around the area of Paulding.
Okay. Go Paulding.
So I don't know. I literally spent hours because I'm like, this is the theory. This is the sign. Like, there has to be something documented that fits this.
So was this like the spooky story they told you guys as kids to like keep you from
Yes.
going up there to make out?
Probably.
It could be that.
Like this is the story I heard ever since I was a little kid.
It's literally
Okay.
a sign on the property, like a
Yeah,
carved
no,
sign
we'll
Yeah,
post a
yeah.
picture
put
of
up
the
by
sign.
the Michigan DNR.
Yeah.
So unless like MichiganRailroads.com is a terrible source, I'm not gonna lie, they looked pretty legit to me. They had a ton of records. I spent hours on this website trying to find the answer. Couldn't find it.
Weird.
But that's kind of the end of the main theories, but there are a couple more kind of notable theories. One of which is people say that it's a mail carrier who was the victim of some sort of accident or something. They didn't really go into any detail on that. And we do know the Paulding post office Paulding did have a post office in the late 1800s, all the way up until 1970-ish. I think it was 71, I want to say. But I couldn't find any records of accidents or deaths that could attribute to a ghost being there. And then another theory, which I think is kind of a ridiculous theory, but it's also one that I have heard a lot, is that it's a ghost of a Native American dancing on and around the power lines.
Okay.
I don't know about this. Like, yes, this area definitely had a lot of natives, but I just think that's kind of an odd thing without any evidence. I feel like someone just kind of made that one up.
Yeah, that's not one I've heard before.
And according to Atlas Obscura, there is a $100,000 reward for the person who figures out what the light actually is.
Okay.
So just
I'm going
fun
up there
fact.
tonight.
Right, exactly. So guys, we got to get our notebooks and we got to find somebody who knows how to do like astronomy, and we're going to have $100,000.
And geology and
Yeah, we
Yes.
needed one from like
Electricity.
every sort of
Yeah.
sector and all of that.
yeah.
Because I feel like we would need a lot of experts.
I'll start to ask
But that-
around.
yeah.
It's kind of all that we really have on the light. Like, I'm curious if there were reports before the 60s of it, because that's the earliest I could find.
I think it was actually on the Wikipedia article that said the first reporting of it was 1966 by a group of boys from the tech.
Yeah, and yeah,
Interesting.
another article I said just kind of generalized to the 60s and that it was a makeout spot.
Yeah.
Mhm.
There was no real specifics. I find that interesting that like
Yeah.
any history before that.
Well, the UP was much more populated than it is now in the past. I believe it was Calumet, which is another town that's like just north of Houghton, was, I think, going to be, or maybe briefly was, the state capital because of how
Oh,
populated
really?
it was.
I didn't know that.
It was because of all the mining. And then when the mining kind of
Mhm.
tanked, like when they said that the machines came about that made it for less people and people were on strike because they were dying, like everyone just basically moved out of town. There are a lot of cool ghost towns up there. I have been to them. You'll be going through the woods where you think you're like off the grid of all civilization, and there's like, boom, a town. But like people don't
Yeah,
live
and
there.
it's just like empty, creepy houses.
Yeah, and it's
Oh,
amazing.
That sounds fun.
I did see one Reddit thread that says that there is a cabin or structure of some sort if you keep walking down this path towards the second hill where you see the light. I cannot find a single second source for that. comment. I don't know if it's someone that
I feel like we just need to go figure that out.
Yeah, so I'm like, I'll just go find it. I'll be the second source.
Right. Go down there and look.
Yeah. But overall, like I'm a skeptic. In reality, I am the type of person where I want something proven to me that there's no other explanations, and then I'll believe that it's supernatural.
For sure.
And I feel like there's a lot of research that still needs to be done before I'm quite at that point.
Yeah.
But I'm fascinated, and I want it to be supernatural. I always have that desire, but my brain has to rule out everything else first.
Yeah, I went through all these different rabbit holes thinking that, like, well, if it is quartz, then, like, what's making it fracture and make this, like, triboluminescence? I looked up to see if there's fault lines going through Michigan. There are. They have been, like, inactive for, like, 300 years. There's so much geology up there that, like, maybe it's not quartz, maybe it's something else. Maybe it's copper and zinc. I mean, who knows? There's so much to look through here, and that's probably why no one figured it out, because it's a plethora of mineral and just unknowns.
And what really threw me off is the lack of a train track there.
Yeah, that I find hilarious.
I was upset reading that, because that's just for the last 20 plus years, that's what I've heard.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like all of a sudden, nope, my own personal research made that not real. And if anyone finds research that I'm wrong, please send it my way, because I want to believe that.
Yes.
But any final thoughts on the Paulding Light?
Well, I don't have a decision on what I think it will be, but my hope is that the Husky was abducted by aliens, his soul was put into the cloaked man, and he's the one telling the truth.
That's that's a theory we haven't explored.
That's
we
my
need to
100%. That just happened. Yep.
Yeah.
So maybe next time we go up there, he'll be there.
Oh,
maybe the cloaked man is just a very tiny little person, like in Men in Black, where he takes off the cloak and it's just like a robot.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it could be anything at this point.
Yeah, we just
You're
don't
right.
know.
It's so funny that when you think back on all the research you both have done and all the research that it seems like others have done, that still no one has been able to prove definitively it is this.
Exactly.
And that's why
it's so interesting.
That's why, Sam, I'm kind of on your team of, like, skeptic, but I want it. I really do. And one of the things that makes me still, like, a skeptic on the whole issue is what I just said, that so much research has been done and no one has been able to say conclusively it is this.
Yeah, and I feel like I've put myself in a fair amount of situations where supposed haunting, like, I should have experienced something.
Mm-hmm.
And the Paulding Light is one of the scenarios where I'm like, maybe I did. And then I literally have only one other ever where I'm like, maybe did I experience something? I don't know. But, like, Ash, you and I have done dozens of things together.
Oh yeah.
Of haunted places, and that, like, we actually make, like, yearly trips out of doing something like that.
Oh yeah, we love this stuff. But I have yet to find
Such a good
proof
idea.
anywhere of anything. So yeah, I'm still a skeptic.
Yeah, my only, like, potential proof is I went to a bar in Baraboo, Wisconsin one night with my friend Sarah, and it's a whole long story, but long story short, we were told that there was potentially a ghost child in this bar that used to be an inn, and I got, like, ice cold at my legs on, like, a beautiful 75-degree day. That was it. And it's like, I can't conclude that that's what it was, but it was a weird, like, I was noticeably where I'm, like, looking around for a vent when it happened.
Yeah, I mean, I've had weird things too.
And so those are my two
not
experiences where I'm like, I don't know.
All right. Well, we do have the Congress Hotel, which was creeptastic. I mean, just Salem in general.
Allie felt like she felt something at the Congress Hotel.
Well,
yeah, we went to the jail. We went to the Joliet prison.
That was a great one. I loved
And
the
then we
alley
toured
behind
Salem.
the theater. Was it the Oriental, I believe, off of Michigan? It was one theater where it was a fire and everyone in the theater tried to escape throughout a door into the alley, and it was blocked and chained. And
Well, no, the doors, this is one of the regulations that changed how doors need to function, because the doors opened inward and there was a stampede
That's what
of
it
people that they couldn't pull the doors towards them. And so now it's a regulation where your door has to open outward. So in an event, if there is a stampede of people, they're not blocking the doors themselves.
Okay, so a future episode doesn't need to go in this whole recording, but Station Nightclub fire, gotta do that one.
Yes.
Yeah, and I know all about it.
Yes, you'll have to be on there for that one.
Yes.
I like doing these paranormal ones because it's just like, it's all theory based, and I love like conversations on theories. So I'm really excited to do more paranormal stuff in the future.
Yeah.
But that is all we have today. So thank you so much for listening to Have You Heard About This Case? You can find us on Instagram at Have You Heard About This Case Pod, on Twitter at HYHATC Pod. Sorry, that's a long name. Twitter doesn't let us put our full name on there. But then you can also email us at haveyouheardaboutThisCase@gmail.com. We would also really love it if you could leave us a review. And thank you. We'll talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye-bye.